So that's the difference. And so you have to learn how to defend yourself from a very early age, especially at that time. And I had an incident when I was going to school and I got mugged.
How old were you?
I mean, it was like
Ish.
16,
Okay,
15,
teenager.
16, something like that. Yeah. It was a traumatic experience.
Sure.
You know.
That just gets us started. All right, so we're episode 2 of a talk story with Bakatare Inc. This week I don't have the other half of Bakatare Inc. He's actually in Hawaii, Mark Carano, but it's me with Aresio Souza. Been my friend for several years now. Quite the eclectic story and list of, you have kind of a long resume. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate it.
And I see that you're wearing your Carioca shirt.
Yes.
That's your nickname, right?
Yes, my nickname. Born in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to tell us what Carioca means?
Yes, Carioca has a double meaning for me. It was my first nickname because I was born in Rio de Janeiro. Actually, it's a nickname that came later in my life when I was doing my master's degree in São Paulo. And I'm originally a physical therapist, and I was doing my master's degree there. And then because I was the only one from Rio de Janeiro, and then people joke about Carioca. So that's how it started. It actually started late in life. But I ended up settling here in California, and it actually means CA, California, Rio de Janeiro, and California. So that's actually my route.
I never even thought of that.
Yes, and clever. Also I decided to name my sailboat as Carioca with the name, which is kind of a different story.
So, okay, real quick, just to summarize for the viewers, the reason why I thought it would be interesting to have you on is because, like I said, you have this sort of diverse background and you have your fingers in a lot of different pies, so to speak. So we, of course, bonded over the fact that you do Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. I've been training for a long time, too. You're currently a brown belt. You've placed 3rd in the Masters and the IBJJF World Championships. You also used to be a former professional volleyball player and I know very little about that, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the big organization in the volleyball universe is the AVP.
Yes, tour. In the United States. When I came to U.S., I came for professional reasons, so I was going to graduate school in New York at NYU, and at that point I was just, competing for fun. But I did compete in Brazil early on, and when I was still, and then in Brazil we have the Confederation of Volleyball in Brazil, the CBV, and I competed there. And since I was a teenager,
did you play volleyball in high school too, or?
In Brazil is different than here.
Okay.
Brazil, we have the soccer clubs. They carry the other modalities like basketball, volleyball, and so on. So I played for Botafogo first, and then I played for Flamengo for a little bit, and then Hebraica. Yeah.
Okay. I was also particularly interested in the fact that you are a physical therapist, very sort of, I feel like, appropriate profession to be in if you're going to train jiu-jitsu and do all these other sports and beat your body up and all that stuff. And you also are sort of like this, you've been very interested in technology and using that to, I guess, fast forward your life and improve your professional life as well. So we've had some conversations about AI specifically, which I'm trying to learn. Thus far, I feel like I know very little. I can spell AI correctly now, which is about it. But you've been involved in that too. So I'm sure we'll touch on all of these topics.
Yeah.
But so starting from the beginning, then you grew up in Rio, is that correct?
Correct. Yes, grew up in Rio for the most part, but my dad was in the military. My dad was actually Air Force. Tomorrow's Father's Day. I'm actually writing a blog on his, to celebrate him. And I had a couple years that I lived in the north of Brazil, a state called Ceará, city called Fortaleza, which is the capital. And it was a great time because I got to meet for a very short period of time my great-grandmother, and she was native of the land. And it was only 4 years. My dad was on the tail end of his military career at that point. I was the third born child from, a second marriage with my mom, and she met my dad, and my dad was until end of his career. So my mom had me when she was 41. Yeah, so it was like a late. And my dad retired in Fortaleza, so I got to see the state where both my parents are from. Actually, even though they met in Rio, they're both from the same state, and I got to meet my great grandmother before she passed.
So you were born in Rio, but then
Born in
at a
Rio.
young age moved to Fortaleza.
No, it was actually later on.
okay.
It was at the tail end of my dad's military career because he was already an officer in the Air Force, and he was asked for this last assignment in the state that he's from, and then we moved over there and stayed there for 4 years.
You said that was in the north of Brazil?
North of Brazil, yeah,
Okay,
Ceará.
I'm also terrible with geography. Where's Rio in comparison to everything?
So Rio is the southeast of Brazil. It's considered,
Southeast.
yeah.
And it's like a beach community, right? From
Yes,
what I
a beach
understand.
community.
Famous
Yes.
beaches are like Ipanema, is that correct?
Yes, I used to live in Copacabana, which is next to Ipanema. Is that very close to Ipanema actually.
Also a famous beach, right? I hear that name all the time. So.
Yeah.
And early on, what were your interests when you were younger, when you were still in school? Is that when you started to get real interested in sports and whatnot? And
Yeah. So the funny story about that is, I came from kind of humble beginnings. With my dad was the sole provider of the house, and my mom would stay home. And but my mom was very hard on education. She was very like into getting kids to school and making sure that we come out in a way that we can have a good life. And but Rio, when I grew up in the 90s, kind of late 80s, early 90s, it was pretty rough. And my mom wanted me to learn English. So, and there's kind of a interesting story because she said I wanted to do martial arts.
you said you wanted to do martial
Yeah,
arts.
and then it's like, but there's only money to do one thing. And then I said, well, I cannot learn martial arts on my own, but I can definitely learn English on my own. So I never took an English course in my life.
So that was the compromise? That you
That was
were,
the
you were going to
compromise.
teach yourself English,
Yes.
basically, learn it
Yes.
on your own on the side,
Yes.
as long as they pay for the martial arts portion of
Yes,
it.
yeah, and start with karate actually, and then I went to Muay Thai. Jiu-Jitsu was actually the last one that I engaged, but the reason was the streets were really something. I grew up in a really nice neighborhood, as I just mentioned before, in Copacabana, and but Rio is different because Rio, the favelas that we call the slums area, they are in the middle of the main pockets, different than São Paulo. São Paulo is everything is in the periphery, so all the violence and stuff, they have to commute into the city to be able to make any sort of a robbery or things like
trouble.
that. Yeah. In Rio, no. In Rio, they can just come down from those kind of nice mountains. It's actually interesting because in the United States, that's the most expensive real estate, right? Like if you're in the mountains and you overlook the ocean and stuff like
the
that.
views. And
Yeah. In Rio, I don't know. Have you been in Rio?
I've never been to Brazil. For 29 years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I still have never been to Brazil.
Oh, yeah. So missing out. You're definitely going to come.
I would love to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the difference. And so you have to learn how to defend yourself from a very early age, especially at that time. And I had an incident when I was going to school and I got mugged.
How old were you?
I mean, it was like
Ish.
16, 15,
Okay,
16,
teenager.
something like that. Yeah. It was a traumatic experience.
Sure.
Like a fear for my life for the first time kind of idea. And I bet when I reflect on this, like I bet the guy didn't have a gun or anything. He just really did a
Right.
good job on psychological warfare.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that experience, it could very easily have been as bad as you think it was too, and things could have turned out much worse, obviously. So, hopefully it wasn't as bad as you said, and then that's why you're here, and thank God for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so that motivated you to want to learn how to defend yourself, and
Yeah, it was a combination of things. This was one fact, but once you get to martial arts and you get to some training, you kind of realize that, the best idea is actually not to fight.
Sure, to
You
avoid
know?
it altogether.
Yeah, avoid it altogether. But I grew up in a time where there were gangs in Rio. They're not as common anymore because the now we still have the robbers, the favela and stuff, but there were gangs, like actual people that live in nice buildings and stuff that they congregated, and there's this gang from this neighborhood against that gang, and then it was a lot of fight on the streets, separate from the robberies or
Right.
people that need something, they want to just get money. No, there were confrontations on, you go to a nightclub, matinee for what we call in Brazil for if you're less than 18, you cannot go to a full nightclub into midnight. There was a lot of gangs and there's a lot of fights. So it became almost like my generation and I don't remember almost anybody in my area, Copacabana, Ipanema, because my school was in Ipanema, that didn't know something about fighting,
It's just part of the culture.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah, I think Hawaii was kind of similar. I think Rio was definitely rougher. But yeah, I mentioned this in the last episode too. But Hawaii, in the generation that I grew up in, at least, had something similar where if you were a boy in Hawaii and you were growing up, when I was growing up there in the 80s and the 90s, you were going to get into a fight, whether you wanted to or not. That was just part of the culture there too. I'm curious though. I mean, you come from a similar background in that sense and grew up with that. Do you think there's any value to growing up in what I would consider like a warrior culture? And what I mean by that is, I am notorious for like having the big mouth. Like I'm usually the one that will say the wrong things. I'm a smart ass. If someone says something to me, I'm very happy to respond and participate in that. But I also have learned to sort of like know when to shut up, know when I'm like crossing a certain line, because I feel like I've seen enough growing up to know that like, there are certain lines you don't want to cross. And if you do, then you get in trouble and there's a limit, you know what I mean? And I feel like some people who have grown up without that, like that do not grow up in a warrior culture or a culture where that's just sort of like normal and part of the everyday life. They grow up, I don't want to say more, I guess the easiest way to say it is they're a little bit more entitled. They're a little bit more, I guess, enabled, and they've never experienced that. So they don't know when to shut up. And they're usually the ones that they think that they're the toughest ones in a bar or something if they're getting drunk or something.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, but just to kind of use a little combination of my life path, because how the way you grew up, it's pretty much determined by your geographic location where you're born and your parents are and things like that. That's the part that you cannot control, and I'm thankful for my upbringing in that sense. But later on, I discovered science, and that's actually what kind of changed me to kind of understand a little bit more on the moderate way of thinking of this. If you go deep into the science part of it, you will understand that, especially for males, for boys, and you can see this across the entire spectrum of the animal kingdom. It's like they need some sort of a wrestling, some sort of a contact, physical contact, and society, as well as for us, like it helps to self-modulate the individual, and you start from an early age understanding hierarchies and understanding things that are definitely important for growing up as a boy. And I think society departing. For me, what I've seen in transition in it happens. Brazil is actually something interesting because Brazil is a delayed version of the United States. A lot of people don't know that. Like in the past, the gap was big because we didn't have social media technology, and the information takes time to get there. But we've been influenced by the same types of shows, the same types of, soap operas or whatever. We do have our special soap operas from there, but the cable TV pretty much kind of gets into your head since an early age, right?
So a cultural influence.
Cultural influence. And what I noticed is that the first big mistake that happened in the United States and here was the taking out physical education from a curriculum, pretty much, nearly. That creates more sedentary. So like we look at kind of obesity rates in the United States and Brazil kind of following the same path. About a third of the population is either overweight or obese.
Was that true? That's how it is in Brazil too?
It's
It sort of
it's
follows
it's, it's
suit?
in the same path, yeah, and the same path where even child are overweight earlier than before and things like this. It's in the same path. Well, United States has a much broader base of, if you think about like in terms of mix of people from different parts of the world, because everybody wants to come to the United States originally, right? Maybe less now, but
I was thinking of actually, sorry, not to interrupt, but I was thinking about that on the way here, how I feel like Brazil is one of the few countries that's very similar to the United States in that aspect. Like, it's hard for me to nail down in my head. If you tell me like that person's a Brazilian, I don't have like one stereotype that I assign a Brazilian to. And it's my understanding, having grown up, or not grown up, but having known so many Brazilians over the last several decades because of, we're into the jiu-jitsu thing, and having it explained to me that, well, it depends on where you are in Brazil, because there were so many different sort of other, ethnic influences, people that have come and gone throughout history. Like there's one area where like German people had a large influence, or other people where they're much darker skinned people. And I was like, wow, there's nowhere else. Oh wait, the U.S. is like that too. So, I guess kind of the same thing, but so similar in that sense, right?
yes, it's similar in that sense. It's just that the concentration is it's different. There's Brazil has there's a lot of disparity that is not necessarily something that people pay attention to on the day-to-day basis, because you think about Brazil, like if you've never been there, and the people that actually been there, foreigners, they most likely go to Rio, they most likely go to São Paulo, like they go to the big cities. So in those big cities, the impression that you have is like, okay, this is modern, this is like American-like to some extent. You get the same amenities, great food, great service, and public transportation to some extent in some places. And so you get this kind of experience of being kind of more developed. But the disparity is huge, huge. And to my point on this is like there is a difference between you growing up in like Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Minas Gerais, for that matter, or even Espírito Santo, which is a upcoming area, than if you're in Manaus, for example. So it's a big difference.
And which one is better and which one is worse?
Or it depends. I think.
I mean, which one is like more affluent and has,
Well, São Paulo is absolutely the most affluent place in terms of.
out of all those places you listed?
Yes, and São Paulo is because the financial center is in São Paulo, and it has been for a long time. It's like thinking about like New York.
So is São Paulo like the biggest like city, like metropolis, of all the big cities in Brazil or whatever? That's like when you think of like a Wall Street or like a financial district.
Yes. São Paulo population is bigger, and there's more exchange of money. Financial centers are there.
I learned an interesting trivia tidbit about Sao Paulo, I don't know, decades ago, but the largest population of Japanese people outside of Japan is in Sao Paulo. So
Yes,
also
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, there's the same way that in America they say, Park Avenue has, a lot of the money in the United States, in New York. I lived in New York for several years. In Sao Paulo, you have a street called Faria Lima. And Faria Lima is where a lot of the big business are.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like the equivalent of like a Wall Street, something like that.
Pretty much. That
So,
sense.
so growing up in Brazil, you got interested in martial arts because of the culture there. At what point did you also? What were the other sports? Like when did you get into the volleyball thing? And
Yeah, I started volleyball first.
okay, before the martial arts.
No, actually, I started martial arts first, but I started volleyball at the almost at the same time to some extent, because the volleyball was the free thing because you're at the beach, and I started actually at the beach, and then I was invited to play in a club, Botafogo. I had a friend that played with me. I progressed pretty quickly, and I used to have 42-inch vertical, so I was a big jumper.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big jumper, and so he's like, oh, "Why don't you come try for Botafogo with us?" And so I ended up playing volleyball. I went there to test, but I was a bench. I was never, like the guy to, because I played indoors, and then I'm actually short for indoors. I'm only 6 feet tall. But I developed my skills going there, and the beach was my thing. And when I was 17, they put the first tournament together for beach volleyball. And another guy, the same height as me, we were great defensive, and I was a big jumper, so I ended up doing blocking for doubles. And then we won at that time, that would be considered pretty much the national for my age, right? Under 18.
You
And
said that they put on the first beach volleyball tournament. Well, did beach volleyball not exist?
for under 18, yeah, for under 18. So they put a series of tournaments. There were 5 tournaments, and whoever wins or get the most points on the 5 tournaments would be the champions.
Okay.
So my partner at that time, Ilmer, if you were watching this, he's still involved in volleyball, so he's a coach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a coach in Rio for a volleyball team in Fluminense. And, it was a great experience because what I didn't do so good indoors, but I went there, and then you learn the actual proper technique because you have coaches and stuff like that. Then you go, and then you go to the beach, and then you're actually able to kind of win against the people that are considered the best of that age group, right?
You said you were short for being an indoor player. Is it normal to need to be taller for indoor volleyball versus beach volleyball? Like you can get away with being shorter in beach volleyball?
In general, you can get away because beach volleyball is doubles. So you 2 people on a court, and indoor volleyball is 6. And then usually you can have double or triple blocks. So, and you're going to have at least a double. Like if you're short, you're probably not going to be a middle. If you're short, you're probably going to be an outside hitter, most likely. Shorter, I would say. We have, not many examples of shorter guys that actually made it, so much on indoors. There's a few, but they had the pretty.
But then
vertical.
you had a 9-foot vertical jump. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh Jesus! Sorry. Like I said, this is the first one we're doing on my own, so some equipment malfunctions along the way.
No worries. Yeah.
Okay, and so that continued. That you started doing that in high school, continued after high school, and when did you start being interested in the physical therapist universe in that route?
Yeah. So the physical therapy was I want to play volleyball, to be honest with you, but my mom gave me the realistic check. She was.
You gotta have something to fall back on.
The thing about sports in Brazil, different than the United States, in almost all of them, is there's some sort of a level of sponsorship that you can get if you're really good at it, especially. In Brazil, it's very difficult. I mean, a lot of the people that I actually know, they had some, we call patrocínio in Portuguese.
What does that mean?
Pai means dead.
Okay.
And so sponsorship, so the word sponsorship in Portuguese is patrocínio, which is we change to the pa to the pai, meaning that the PAI, which is the dead, like the dead sponsor, sponsorship kind of it. Because families that, have a little bit more of income, and then they can kind of play that game with the kid to pay coaches to train them and all this. So my mom gave him the reality check, study, and so I ended up going to physical therapy school by my best friend, that was 1 year older than me, and unfortunately he passed. He had meningitis. Yeah, the viral version of it. No, bacterial actually. The bacterial version is nearly deadly. If you pretty much don't die, you're gonna be bad.
I'm very familiar with the term meningitis, but I don't actually know like what the disease looks like. What happens when you get meningitis?
Yeah, so the pathway completely it's complicated, but it's kind of an airborne disease to some extent, and you get an inflammation that somehow inflames in the brain and the spinal cord. They have layers of protection, and those within this connection between the brain and the spinal cord, there's a fluid that kind of, it's a shock absorption to some extent, but also has other functions, and you get an inflammation on a meningite. Meningite is one of those layers, right? Like the most common one, because like it can cross the blood-brain barrier, is the subarachnoidal, and so you get an inflammation. That inflammation creates stiffness in your neck and back, and the only way to actually test it is with a needle in your spine. They take some liquid out of your spinal fluid, and then they test it and they confirm it's meningitis. But there are different types. There's the viral version. It's a little bit lighter, and then the bacterial version is the one that they will, if it's not going to kill you, it's going to leave you paralyzed and crippled, and yeah.
But they're both treatable to some extent? Or it sounds like the bacterial one less so.
Generally, people start with, and I had twice actually.
You had it twice?
Yes.
Well, yeah. It must be treatable then.
Yes. Well, I had the viral version, and I ended up in a hospital.
Wow.
So story for another time, but
and you said your friend passed away from the bacterial.
yes, because
meningitis.
he got the bacterial one, and he made it to the hospital, because you actually start having symptoms when you only get to know or potential diagnosis when you start having symptoms, and one of the symptoms is high fever, and the other one is rigidity in the posterior side, like in the neck, back. There is a sign where you try to kind of bend the neck and extend your leg. That's kind of a sign that you probably have meningitis.
And so by the time you're finding out whether you do or don't, it's already pretty late into the process of having it.
Yeah, you're going to treat around mostly you're going to treat around the symptoms, in that case, like a fever and stuff like that. But I had to, when I had it in the United States as soon as I was here early on, and I got a shot in the spine of morphine. No, I got the spine was the punction for testing, but I got a morphine, and then my pain went away like immediately. It was like I was in extremely headache, and it was like, wow, suddenly the world, like, it's back.
Morphine's addictive too, though, isn't it? Like that's.
Well, I think the pain is just, I don't recommend anybody to even think about that. It's like, it's painful. Rigidity and pain, it's pretty bad. But sorry, I drifted, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. Your friend passed away from it, and did that have something to do with your decision to want to get into physical therapy?
Well, so we were volleyball partners too. One of the guys that I played with, and the guy that I won the season was a different guy. He was 1 year ahead of me, and then we started having these conversations. Yeah, but he was my best friend. Go for physical therapy. We can open a clinic together, and then you can work with athletes, and you can recover them. And it was the second best thing at that time, other than you take, tons of years going to medical school. Because in a physical therapy school, you could go for, a bachelor's degree in 4 years, then you get a master's or.
Is that 2 more years usually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have to get to the master's degree before you can actually treat people?
No.
You can do it with a bachelor's degree too?
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah. Not in the United States. There's no bachelor's degree in physical therapy in the United States anymore.
Here you have to get at least a master's degree. Is that
No, it's actually a doctoral. Since 1998, the American Physical Therapy Association started a process to transition to a doctor of physical therapy. So all physical therapists there graduated in the United States. They're DPTs.
how many years of school is that after getting your bachelor's?
About 3. You get a bachelor's and then another 3 years, depending on the university.
And what's the undergrad degree for that? Like usually people will get.
You have to have some prerequisites, but mostly like if you're in biology, exercise science or something, you have to have some prerequisites, but you can get with a bachelor's degree.
And you got your master's in it in Brazil?
I got 2 master's degree. I have one master's degree in physical therapy that is from Brazil. The other one is at NYU in ergonomics and biomechanics. And that's the transition in my career. I shift from injury rehabilitation per se to injury prevention. It was intentional to some extent. I started doing injury prevention when I was still in Brazil, and I was communicating with an organization in the United States, and then I was like, okay, so why people, so let's backtrack a little bit. So
Okay.
I was an idealistic,
Okay.
individual. So I went to college for physical therapy, and I was decided I'm going to be the best physical therapy that ever existed in this planet, and then everybody's going to
Very
heal.
ambitious.
Everybody's going to heal, and I work with them.
Great goal.
And but when you go to school and then you become that idealistic, and then you go to the real world and you start treating people, and you see people coming back with the same injury over and over and over, and it was like, wow. So I start with sports, which is kind of a good segue for this, because I was already an athlete, and it's like working with sports was a natural thing for me. I did internship with the best physical therapist in sports at that time, Nilton Petroni. If you're watching this, you're going to hear your name. So he was the physical therapist that recovered Romario for the World Cup.
Oh, wow.
And later on, Ronaldo for the World Cup. Ronaldo had a bad injury on the knee. So I was in that group of interns, and I did really well in my internships, and I actually got the job, became, a director of physical therapy program in Brazil because of him. So I'm very thankful for that experience. So natural thing, do sports, physical therapy, because the guy that I was supposed to open a clinic with, he passed away. And he, in that internship, taught me, a lot of important things about sports. And then as I was going to the tail end of my physical therapy program, I noticed that I didn't want to work with sports at that time. It was kind of a transition. I started working with neurological patients. I did an internship later on with the best physical therapist in neurological in Rio de Janeiro. He was in a federal university. He became a professor at the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro, José Vicente Martins, if you're watching this. And he was very good. So I started getting this interest about neurological patients and the brain and how the brain works and all of this. And I decided to do my specialization in neuroscience. That was my first kind of handle of understanding that the topic that I was trying to transition to, which is this idea that you are idealistic that you're going to recover everybody, but the reality is that when you work with somebody as a physical therapist for, like, let's say 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the session, if you're in a healthcare system with the insurance, now they pay less and less and less, so people keep you less time.
You got
and less
7
time.
minutes.
You got 7 minutes for a recovery and things like that, but that's a joke for.
Right.
And then the conditions that apply for you to develop the injury to begin with are sometimes 8 hours a day. If you're a professional athlete, could be the poor training techniques or things like that. But if you're a worker, which is the area that I work now, you're exposed to the risk factors that actually cause the issue 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, depending on your shift. And then it was like, that's a kind of unfair battle, right? Like you understand that even with good science, with good approach and things like that, it's hard to undo,
That much
eight
damage
hours,
with
eight
so little
hours
time.
of damage, or 9 hours or 10 hours, whatever that is. And then you start shifting that, well, maybe I should help people to prevent that to begin with. And so,
Seems logical to think that if you want to save the whole world, instead of like, there's not enough of you to go around, right? There's only one of you, and you can only help someone 30 minutes to an hour at a time in a therapy session. And the chances are they're going to come back with that injury. It's just going to, it's going to be a recurring thing potentially, depending on what they're doing or what caused it in the first place. But yeah, it makes sense that if we start focusing on prevention, then you have a bigger impact, and people don't get hurt in the first place. So makes sense.
yeah, yeah. It helps because you understand how the disease or the injury develops. And then when you go to the prevention, because a lot of people in prevention, they've not necessarily come from a kind of a medical background. And then you can make the bridge because you've been there. You actually help people to get out of pain and dysfunction and disability and things like that. And then you understand how to connect the dots a little bit better. At least I think.
This, interestingly enough, ties back to a topic that we talked about in the first episode with my friend Mark, who has started a new brand called Makule Jiu-Jitsu, which is Hawaiian for sort of like old man jiu-jitsu. And it's all about focusing on, how not to get injured or to, to have some longevity in the sport, so to speak. So you being sort of an expert at prevention and whatnot, do you have some, I guess, quick tips, a short summary list of how people that are getting older should be training, not necessarily in jiu-jitsu, but maybe just in broad strokes, like, just if you're trying to be athletic in any way, shape, or form, what do you do different, let's say, post 40s versus what you used to be able to get away with when you're 20? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Peter Drucker said probably one of the best lines that I remember. If you can measure, you can manage. I don't know if you know Peter Drucker, but he was the master of administration and management and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so, but that applies across the board. I'm certified in too much stuff, but I think for the average user, there's something called functional movement screen, FMS. I was certified with them many years ago, and I think they have a simple way to screen which movement you may need some work on it. And I think that's a better approach because just kind of tips, sure. I would say that mobility, it's probably one of the key things for making sure that your longevity goes in training jiu-jitsu. But it's much broader than that. When you look at from the perspective, I'm also, when I was in New Jersey, I was the president of the American Exercise Physiology chapter there. I'm affiliated with them. I used to teach physiology and exercise physiology for Toro College in New York in a physical therapy program. It's one of the things that I, always been passionate was about teaching because I used to be a faculty in Brazil before I moved to the United States. And the goal was to come here and do my PhD and go back home. And at least that was the plan to get my grad school. I always had the dream to study overseas. But this idea of trying to monitor your musculoskeletal health is probably the most important part for anybody that does jiu-jitsu or wants to play volleyball longer to their late ages. And that would be like monitoring your musculoskeletal health. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence today about how we used to call, like, for example, the VO2 max or like the cardiopulmonary capacity as the holy grail of health, right?
Isn't that still what people are saying?
No, it's still to some extent,
Okay.
because in order for you to maintain good cardiovascular capacity, you need to have an able body to do it, right? Like whether you go for a rower or a running or a treadmill, running on the street or a treadmill or something, or a bike, or ergo bike, you need to have an able body. And in that sense, musculoskeletal health that is not doing well will compromise your cardiovascular function and vice versa, right?
Sure.
So you need, the ability to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the muscle, but the muscles need to be able to exercise, and so you can keep your VO2 max high. I think it's, for jiu-jitsu athletes, that's how you started the conversation. The VO2 max is not a big deal, honestly, for the most part. It's more mobility and musculoskeletal function. Yeah.
Is there a simple sort of at-home continuous process to be able to monitor your own mobility, like certain? I mean, I don't know. It starts to sound like it's just common sense, but yeah, just swing your arms around and make sure you still have full range of motion or things like along those lines. But.
Yeah. So I think I think the best way I can advise people is if you do a quick Google search on what the FMS test is, you're gonna find it. There's too much information on it.
That's a test you can perform on your own. Like you don't have to go pay a doctor to go do it in their office.
You can well.
I'm sure that option's available too.
You can probably get somebody certified near you, most likely.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a physical therapist, but you can find somebody near you. You can also try to look at what the tests are and do it on your own. Try to do a self-evaluation. I generally recommend people to get somebody, at least at the first session or the first few sessions, to get somebody that knows what to do, because they can be very, very helpful in kind of give you a programming and how you will address those kind of it's a screen.
I guess that would be important because unless your results are perfect, you want to know what to do to improve, right? So
Yeah.
it would be better to talk to a professional at that point.
Yeah, but the basics are the same. Do you have full range of motion in your ankles, knees, and hips? Like a good example of this is when you squat all the way down, can you keep your heels on the floor? Right? Like if your heels start coming out, you probably don't have full range of motion. It could be in your ankles. It could be because you're tight in some areas. And then that's where you may need a more. So the screen is the first level. It's like the analogy is when you go to the eye doctor, they ask you to read a couple letters, in different rows. That's a screen.
Right.
But the assessment part is when you start putting the lenses, and then you actually, so now I know exactly what degree I need to correct.
Gotcha.
So that's a difference between a screen and assessment. Assessment to give you precise information, what you need to solve. A screen will tell you something's wrong, and then you should probably know more. That's why you can do it at home if you just Google FMS.
But you're not going to get the assessment on that level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to need a professional. But that's a good start.
Yeah. So this was all happening in Brazil, where your interest in, working on post-injury rehabilitative care shifted more towards preventative focus. Is that correct?
It started there, but I was finishing my master's degree in physical therapy later in 2005, 2005, October, precisely.
In Brazil.
Yeah, and but I had my eyes set in studying overseas, so I was already moving to United States. So I came in 2008, the coming August 2008, and because I was going to NYU.
And so those 3 years in between was when you were just practicing physical therapy in Brazil.
Yeah, I was a director of physical therapy program, so I was a faculty, and I was also treating people. So I had a blended hybrid career with treating part of the time and teaching part of the time, and also have administrative tasks because I was director of physical therapy program. Right. So I had to manage staff, professors, and some other administrative responsibilities.
And so what was it, 2008 you said you came?
2008 is August is when I came for the first time with the idea of taking the exams, because if you're from another country,
right,
and people that are from other countries and have degrees in other countries, they know that the validation process is kind of a painstaking process in the United States. So especially coming from a licensed profession,
right,
I had to take TOEFL exam, English as a second language. I had to take had to validate my credentials from Brazil to be able to sit for the bar exam in physical therapy. So there was a lot of steps, and I was like, okay, so I had some money saved. It was like the best way to do this is if I'm already there. So it took 6 months to kind of see if I could get my English better and also take the exams and starting doing like that. And got to the NYU school, which was what I was looking for.
And then how many years that was another 2 years after that, studying there?
I actually ended up staying for a long time because I didn't get in to NYU until the 2010 program, because the way we operate in Brazil is different than here. The calendar year and the academic year are the same, right? In the United States, the academic year starts in August, because summertime is in the middle of the year. In Brazil, summertime is in December. And so I came to prepare for this, and we end up getting into the program, being able to start the program in 2010 group, because I came at the end of 2008. So 2009, I was taking exams.
All the certifications.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very good.
And the second master's degree, again, was in
ergonomics and biomechanics.
And biomechanics.
Yeah, and ergonomics is the preventive side.
Right.
Yeah, the biomechanics can be used to understand. Initially, I came when my first idea was to show the biomechanics for volleyball, because I was in that space. But then I got into the really nitty gritty of prevention and start working and having internship opportunities, and it was like, oh, this is what I want to do.
And so how do you still, you said your focus shifted from the, wanting to treat post-injury versus the prevention. Is that still how you feel today then?
Yes.
It's been a little while since
Yes. But, I think the great thing, since you talk about this for the jiu-jitsu folks and people that, it's I'm going to be 50 this year, so
a young pup.
Well, but managing your body through, because you're a black belt, so jiu-jitsu is rough.
Yeah.
It takes a toll. It takes a toll on your body, and then managing this through the years help me put programs for organizations where people and workers can actually do those things to prevent injury on themselves by doing work. I think this is like one of the benefits of have done in a rehab setting, and then shifting to prevention, understanding like what are the stepping stones that go into the injury to present itself.
So, for me, the most obvious things are when I was, in my 20s or whatever it is, I didn't need to warm up. I didn't need to stretch afterwards or do anything. I could just go every day and do whatever athletic endeavor it was that I was interested in, whether it was jiu-jitsu or something else, and beat myself up pretty good and not focus a lot on recovery or really have to worry about taking care of myself, because you're sort of like, sort of invincible when you're younger, right? Like you can come back the next day and might be a little sore or something, but you can struggle through the pain. And I feel like I noticed that a lot of athletes, once they get into the age ranges that we're in, like in the 50s or whatnot, we still have, a lot of us still have that sort of meathead mentality where it's like, it's just like when I'm younger, I'm just going to suffer through it. You know what I mean? And that clearly that doesn't work anymore. I've had several surgeries now where I've had to like repair tendons and ligaments and those kinds of things and deal with issues. So is it safe to say, and feel free to expand on this, but I guess the main areas that I feel like I need to focus on if I want to be able to have any sort of sustainability in an ongoing and consistent training practices, I got to focus on warming up properly. I got to focus on how much I'm willing to hit a gas pedal and go hard, like during the activity. Definitely the post-activity recovery, like for me, that's a lot of static stretching, it's a lot of dynamic, movement, warm up prior to any activity, and a lot of static stretching afterwards. Food is super important to me now, like what I'm eating as far as how it contributes to potentially inflammation and that kind of stuff. And then the other big variable for me is rest. Like if I don't get like the 7 or 8 hours, then I know I'm not gonna, my nervous system is gonna be a little bit more shot. Like if I try to go hard again anytime soon after that. I feel like in broad strokes, those are the main categories that I'm looking at. Am I missing anything, or you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, I think you hit 95%.
Well, I'm doing all right then.
Yeah, so
I might survive.
Yeah, you got a pretty well laid out there. I would say that the evidence on sleep now is overwhelming. Like, I think I remember hearing Khabib talking about in one of interviews or something like that about sleep, and I was like, wow, that's like so accurate the way he was portraying this idea that there's I think what the point is there's too much propaganda on recovery, like this product does this product does that, and it was a little bit the nut bits sleep, good sleep, and for I'm not a professional athlete, I'm a professional and train on the side, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, you're still fairly competitive. I mean, you just took third place at the World
Sure,
Championships not that long ago.
but it's different. It's different when you're a professional athlete. Those guys, they train 8 hours a day.
That's their
I mean,
job
I don't
every
have
day. Right.
I don't have time to train 8 hours a
Right.
day. I wish.
Yeah.
I got to pay the bills. But the in that case, he was talking about his routine. It's like he goes and then he trains and then go back and then he sleeps and then he go train again, and it was like recovery. You nail when you're talking about the sleep part. There's one aspect of nutrition, for sure, 100%. Staying away from systemic inflammation is another big thing, and that's what I think that the knowledge that I was able to acquire in my endeavor in physical therapy and other things, because I always read other things. It's like I never had a significant injury until the year before the competition last year, where I had a shoulder injury.
I remember you were talking about that.
Yeah, so that was the first time. And it was the first time I was like, okay, I'm going to need help for this. So I ended up going to UCLA to treat. Because the manual therapy, you cannot do it yourself, You can have as much knowledge as you can, and you can do all the exercises and stuff like that. But the manual therapy part does help.
Okay, as someone who has had a recurring shoulder, like I have a torn rotator cuff on my right side. What do you mean manual therapy you can't do by yourself? What do you need to have someone else do for you?
Well, especially in the shoulder area, because the manipulation, like I can probably do some self-mobilizations in other parts of the body with bands and stuff like that. With the shoulder is a little bit difficult.
So what kind of manipulation is somebody else doing that you can't do yourself? Like, is that like massage kind of stuff, or?
No, it's not
Stretching.
massage. It's a general common thing that a lot of people think that is the same, but it's not. No, the manipulation is it has a specific purpose. I'll give you a simple example. Like if I'm gonna move my arm this way, right? Like for this motion to occur, and you have full range of motion overhead, right? Like for this motion to occur, there is we call joint play movement. So the actually head of the humerus needs to go down as the humerus is going up. So it's called arthrokinematics. So it's actually, there is a motion that has to happen within that motion that you see, like abduction here or flexion, right, in front of the body. So if for some reason you get a disruption on this joint play movement, let's say when I'm trying to raise my arm, instead of the head of the humerus going down, it's going up, it's going to hit the acromion and it's going to create an impingement, for example. So in that particular case, you have a disruption on the joint play movement. So there are some ways to do self-mobilization, but what I want to say is that you get a professional that understands manual therapy, and you're way better off because they can time and then they can look at what direction. Because the shoulder specifically is a triaxial, right? Like it moves in 3 dimensions, and then you have a combination of all those dimensions. So it's actually more complex than that. And in fact, shoulder injuries tend to be worse than back injuries, for example. People who have back injuries, sometimes a couple of days they are back. Shoulder can take a long time to recover,
Right.
you know? So that's the idea. The idea that there's the name of the motion is, you know, flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, rotation, or circumduction, if you will. But there is an intrinsic movement that happens inside the joint. That's the joint play part, or orthokinematics, more fancy term, that needs to occur in a certain direction for the motion to occur. And then manual therapists, they know how to do that. The physical therapists with manual therapist skills. If you go to physical therapy school, you learn some manual therapist skills, but most of the time you're going for more specialty trainings on manual therapy.
So when you had that injury, did you end up getting like surgery or anything, or it was all?
No. I tried conservatively, and then I did. I pay my dues on that. I couldn't. It was left shoulder. I couldn't raise my shoulder.
Wow.
It was like almost like a frozen shoulder, pretty much.
And is it like 100% now?
100%.
Wow.
I could.
Did you
clean, deadlift, or snatch? Can do everything.
Did you any supplements or peptides or anything? Like
No, I
everybody
didn't
talks about BPC 157.
I know. No. I tried the old school way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm terrified of Western medicine in general for the most part. Like I'm afraid to even take like Tylenol and ibuprofen. So I'm always looking for a way to try to, I guess, address whatever it is, if it's an injury or something.
Yeah.
You know, without.
I'm very methodical from the scientific method standpoint. Test, retest. That's one idea. And the other one, this idea is like, okay, I'm going to do this, just this, and see what is the effect.
Oh, you mean, so you're it's almost like you're experimenting with certain modalities or something like this, but you're isolating it and only doing the one thing. Because if you try 10 things all at the same time, you don't know which one is the one contributing to the working, right?
Yes. Sometimes, for the most part, when you go for rehab, you're going to have to do multiple things. But there are ways to, let's put it this way, there are ways to know when you hit the wall on that particular thing. And then it was like, okay, so now I need to add something else.
I guess we're also talking about two different things. I mean, you're coming at it almost from a scientist's perspective, where you're very interested in knowing what thing worked, whereas the typical, I think, you know, the average injured person doesn't care. Like, yeah, fine, do all 10 things at the same time. I don't care which one works as long as one of them works, right? Like that's probably their perspective and their attitude when they're coming at it. Okay, so that was the shoulder injury, and then did you do the IBJJFs after that?
It was in the following year. So the injury was so I did the IBJJF 25, and then that injury happened in 24. I even went to the World's competition, but not the IBJJF, the Jiu-Jitsu World League on 24. Got second place. I lost on the final, but it was 0-0. I just couldn't.
Was it an advantage?
No, there was no advantage.
Oh, they just have to decide.
They had to decide. Yeah, they had to decide. I thought I won, but that's a story for another. I'm biased.
Well, we can talk about that too.
No.
Well, let's talk about your jiu-jitsu journey too, because we talked about how you started it when you were a kid, but we've talked, you know, not during this episode so far, but you've told me on several occasions that you took a long break.
It's almost 20 years. Yeah.
20 years.
Almost 20 years, like 18. 19, something like that. It was very close to it.
Taking a break. Is Holly out?
Yeah, she is.
Hey, Hazel.
Yeah, sorry, we have a dog.
Like I said, this is only the second episode. We only got 7 viewers anyway, so nobody's watching anyway, so we can do whatever we want. So 20 years. What belt were you when you stopped?
Purple.
Purple.
Yeah. And I came back on a purple. I won a couple tournaments and got brown belt.
And did you start training again here in California, or did you already start in New York
No.
before you came out here?
Yeah, so I took a long layoff. I went to training one time when my older coach was coming to Connecticut, and then I went there to meet him. And actually, Professor Stromboski passed away. He was the gym that I was in Connecticut, and yeah, I went there just for like a regular role with my old coach, and that's it. And I came back in 21. When I moved to California, I was starting to think about, okay, so I think I want to go back to training jiu-jitsu. But I was doing volleyball. I was playing a lot. And, but, it was interesting because it was like, I played volleyball all the way to the highest level at some point, and then at that point you just maintain it. So that there was no progress. When I went back to jiu-jitsu, and I was like, I feel good because I feel that I'm still getting better at this thing.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu seems like one of those things that you never finish getting better. You're not. I don't feel like you ever get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm done. There's nothing more left to learn.
Yeah, no. Maybe if you're Roger Gracie or I don't know.
Maybe,
but
maybe I don't know. I'm never gonna have that problem.
I'm not gonna have that problem either. It's like I was training with a new black belt today, and he's super light, but he does a lot of different things, and so you're trying to figure the stuff out. The K guard, I think I mentioned to you earlier before.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I see in practice that I don't know the names of because I might still roll with younger people or whatever it is, but I can't keep track of what's what at this point. How do you feel about it? I mean, I've always just tried to stick to what I know and trying to adapt it to the modern game, so to speak, but I definitely don't have what you would consider to be like a modern game. Do you?
Yeah, I think I'm too nerd. That's the way. I probably bought them.
So you're all in.
200,000 BJJ Fanatics tutorials about things. Probably read every post that John Danaher put it out, and
so all about
I have all the
Barimbolos
names.
And 50-50s and all that stuff. So.
Well, I don't do. I'm over 50. Berimbolo is not for me. but it's I train with young people, and those people.
You're going to be exposed to it.
Yeah, so I think it's good to know how to defend, like you said before. It's like you know how to defend, so that's good.
Well, I didn't say I know how to defend it. I get caught and stuff all the time, but I try to learn how to defend it.
Yeah,
but it's definitely going to be important. But that makes me think also of, I think there are two very different directions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Actually, let's take a quick 1 second break.
Sure.
That we are. And we're back. So we were talking about, I had an observation about what I think are sort of two distinct paths in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I originally got involved and interested in it. Well, first I'll back up and say the thing I love the most about it is the sort of the cerebral component. How people say it's like human chess, and I do love that. There is no. It's not like old kung fu movies where there's 100% move. That's there's no way to defend it or something. There's always a response to any move in jiu-jitsu. There's a way to defend against it, and there's a follow-up sequence and all that kind of stuff. So I do love the puzzle aspect of it, but I also feel like there are two very distinct sort of. There's competitive jiu-jitsu, like sport jiu-jitsu, and there's like jiu-jitsu for self-defense kind of thing, and there's a lot of overlap. There's I would say the majority of jiu-jitsu falls into either one of those categories. But when you speak about competitive jiu-jitsu specifically, there's there's a lot more that is included in that. I feel like that would not necessarily work in the sort of like the self-defense for jiu-jitsu kind of universe. And I guess I don't know if this is a cop-out, but I've always been more interested in the self-defense version of it. Once again, I think because growing up being bullied or whatever it is, and wanting to make sure that my other partner described it best in the last episode. He was like, I'm still very interested in jiu-jitsu. I'm paraphrasing, but he had said that he was still very interested in it because he still wants to, feel confident that he has the ability to basically snatch the life out of somebody. You know what I mean? If he had to defend himself and it came down to it. Mm-hmm. And I'm also very interested in, I guess, just having that confidence. Obviously, like you said earlier, the more we train, really the more I've learned that the best, ideology is to just try to avoid any kind of confrontation altogether. But in the event that something went down, you just want to feel like you at least have some confidence, and statistically, probability wise, the odds are a little bit more in your favor. It doesn't guarantee an outcome, but if something did happen, then maybe you'll end up being okay. How do you feel about the two different universes as it comes to the? Do you see it that way? Do you see it differently?
It's very clear, yeah. It's very clear that there's competitive jiu-jitsu that is competition based, and there is. I mean, I think the best way you can break down this, in my opinion, is just to think about this idea that when you think about competition, you, especially on a higher level, you can definitely tell. I mean, there are some exceptions to that rule, but everybody has a specific game plan and style, right? Like you're going to pull guard, or you're going to be a passer, or you take down, whatever, close guard, or so people become notorious about a specific type of game that they play, and that's how they actually sell those BJJ Fanatics
Right.
Day stuff, or they sell their courses and stuff, because they become the half guard king, or the close guard king, or passing system. When you go to fights on the street, and then I kind of started to tell you the story in the beginning of the podcast about this. I went to martial arts because I grew up in a time where there are gangs and street fights. What I think the self-defense part is a very important. And in jiu-jitsu, I've been to many self-defense things before in jiu-jitsu. And I think the reason I started early on in striking, like karate and then Muay Thai and then things like that, was because right away when I was doing my kind of research as a teenager, it's like, what I'm going to do. What I noticed right away was like, they were not one-to-one fights necessarily when you're in the streets. So I thought that being good at striking would be more effective for me right away. And of course, because sometimes you have two people against you. So
Right.
like how you do jiu-jitsu against two
Jiu-jitsu
people.
is the worst option ever.
You know, it's like it's not
Right.
really a realistic thing. Two guys are trying to attack you, and then you're very good at take people down and submit them, but the other guy's gonna
Right.
hit the
Kick
back
your
of your
head off
head.
your
Yeah,
shoulders, yeah.
exactly. It's like you're gonna pass out. And I think that's the part that I would say about the self-defense, that knowing how to read the situation and understanding if you're in a one-to-one, yes, but if you're in most of the self-defense that I had to do in my lifetime when I was young was really more than one people.
Yeah, I guess that's for me. I'm myself am the walking contradiction when it comes to this. I'm my own biggest critic and the biggest hypocrite when it comes to that topic, because if you ask the people that I've trained with forever, they would tell you probably that I'm best at like the half guard from the bottom. You know what I mean? I have a pretty irritating half guard game. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but that's been the general consensus.
Yeah.
But I would never recommend that, in a real life situation. I have been lucky enough to get invited to train with and help teach like beginners in law enforcement a lot over the last couple of decades. And that's sort of one of the caveats and principles that I always sort of promote, is that, jiu-jitsu is great in a one-on-one situation for self-defense, and especially in their line of work, right? Like usually it oftentimes entails having to control, a suspect or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's great for that kind of stuff. But, in just a normal, everyday, real-life situation, I would recommend trying to use jiu-jitsu to get back up off the ground as quickly as possible, because if you do end up on the ground for whatever reason, if you guys trip or fall, or the guy is good at getting you a takedown or whatever it is, if you have good jiu-jitsu and he doesn't, then you can either sweep him and end up on top, which is a better dominant position. And that's where you should focus on getting to immediately if you're in a real life self-defense situation, or to just get back up altogether and get off the ground. And so, yeah, there is that irony. But yeah, you're not going to see anyone promoting, like pulling guard. And
Yeah. And I think especially in the times that we live, I would say it's law enforcement. I mean, it's a must have. in my opinion, because what the jiu-jitsu can do for the law enforcement, professional is you can immobilize and keep somebody restrained in a humane way.
Right.
Like striking it's too brutal, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's gonna cause
everybody
permanent damage.
everybody's in the camera, and you don't want to see blood spilling and all of this. Like everybody's recording. Like for the law enforcement, it's been pretty tough in recent years. I think jiu-jitsu skills for law enforcement is a must-have, in my opinion.
I agree. There was a viral post that was going around for a while talking about how every law enforcement, agent should be at least a blue belt or a purple belt in jiu-jitsu if they're going to be out there, defending the public or whatnot. And I totally agree with that. I also remember observing what you're saying basically firsthand. I started sort of my path to my journey in jiu-jitsu in 1999 was when I first started, and I remember shortly after that, Krav Maga was becoming very popular in LA.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was at the time, but everyone the big catchphrase was like it's Israeli self-defense. You know what I mean? Like it's very brutal. Yeah. And I think a lot of the law enforcement agencies were embracing that as a tool for to put in their arsenal, so to speak. And I remember hearing about the spikes that went in complaints about use of excessive force and all those kinds of things were starting to happen a lot more. And I think that's because they shifted away from jiu-jitsu, which was a very sort of functional and practical way to control someone without necessarily hurting them, to these, using more brutal, like striking techniques or whatever it is. And I don't know how much of that's actually true. It might just be a theory of mine, but I remember observing it. But you do see it in practical, real world applications. Like if a security guard knows jiu-jitsu or something, and a bouncer at a club, I've used it in that sense where it's a great way to be able to control someone, try to diffuse the situation, before it escalates even further.
Yeah.
Thing.
100%. And if you, I remember when. John Denner, I think, was on the Lex Friedman podcast. It was like, I remember he was saying something that actually sounded like the right thing to think about in the concept of it's also not only from the person that is being restrained standpoint, but also the idea that it's good for the law enforcement officer to apply the jiu-jitsu with the restraining on the ground, because in circumstances like we see heavyweight bouts. I just saw one this past weekend. You can eliminate a lot of power blows if the person is on the ground versus standing up. So you can actually prevent injury on yourself as a law enforcement person. Mm-hmm. So there's the two sides. I think it's a more humane way to restrain somebody that is, let's say, out of line and things like that. But also as a protection mechanism for the law enforcement person themselves.
Yeah, you take away one of the big, I guess, sort of dangers in the variables that happen in a real life situation. I remember, I can't explain it the right way, but I remember that was sort of the scientific breakdown of how I had it explained to me in the beginning, and I think that was the Gracie's sort of proposition, was that a normal fight, requires several variables. Among those are things like timing and power and speed and distance when you're striking, with someone. But if you clinch with someone, then you've removed the distance variable. Mm-hmm. You've mitigated some of the power variable, because if they're pressed up tight, they might still be able to strike, but they're probably not going to be able to get as much leverage and as much power behind those strikes as they otherwise could. And they were all things that made a lot of sense. Wow, it's very. I thought that was so interesting. It was a much more scientific breakdown of why it was practical in its use as a self-defense mechanism versus, it's, I think they were like calling it like a martial science versus like a martial art, you know what I mean? Like back then or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, yeah.
There's a lot of practicality to it.
Yeah. It's interesting how people develop different in different schools of jiu-jitsu. You're talking about your half guard, annoying half guard, and it's like I come from a half guard school lineage. Professor Gordo was one of the first ones to start doing half guard back in the day, and my coach Marcelo, and they're very good in half guard, and then we teach a lot of that stuff in the gym, and I'm terrible at it.
Really?
It's like I'm not a half
You and I
guard
still
guy.
have
Yeah,
not. You and I still have not
Yeah.
like trained together or rolled together or whatever. We should do that sometime. And,
sure.
and you might just be being super humble right now, and I might be being the typical arrogant way that I usually am, and your half guard might be 1,000 times better than mine. So
Oh,
we'll
I
know.
don't think so. No, no.
You might walk
I'm
through
not
mine.
good in either of the half guards, like the knee shield or the deep half guard, and it's not something that. But what I'm notoriously good at is the close guard.
Okay.
Yeah.
From the bottom, you're good at
Yeah,
close guard from the top of the mound.
yeah. So
But so you have a good
People-
close guard, and what makes it good? Is it because of your ability to sweep, finish from there, submissions, like what?
I think the first one is people tell me like, "Man, your legs are so strong." It's very hard to open the close guard, and that's one thing. I think my sweeps are decent from a close guard.
Good finishes.
Not a lot actually. Yeah, no, I'm not very good at finishing from the close guard, but majority of the time I'm able to sweep from the close guard.
Very tough to get out of though.
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you attribute? Well, does it help? I mean, you said you're short for an indoor volleyball player, but 6 feet's not like that short. So is it longer legs? Like, is it harder to open because of that?
I think I have a little bit disproportional limbs to
really?
my torso. Yes.
Like longer bottom half.
Yes. So the way that we usually say in anthropometry, which is the science that studied the relationship of the body parts, is like roughly your wingspan should be your height, roughly.
Yeah, I
right?
heard
Like
that, yeah.
So you probably heard that. It's like kind of the idea. So my wingspan is bigger than my height.
Yours is.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly.
Oh, so you have long arms too.
I have long arms. Yeah, I have long arms and long legs, but my torso is not that long.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you're training with Marcelo Cavalcanti now, right?
Cavalcanti, yes, yeah. MCBJJ and Carson show up.
Yeah, give him his props.
Yeah.
It was great running into him the other day. I
Yeah.
recognize him from way back in the day with from the Hegan
Yeah,
universe as well.
yeah. He was there with Higgin early on. Yeah.
You've reached bronze status at the IBJJF. Do you have any goals? Like, are you trying to get back to?
This year, if my schedule didn't shift so much, I would have gone again. But I got trapped in a project for work, and so it's like you know how it goes for those. You have to dedicate and you have to train, and
Yeah.
it's a time commitment, and the difficult that I have at the moment with the training is that my gym takes me almost 2 hours to get there because I moved here, so I'm
Right.
right here now. It's
And
like
they're in Carson.
they're in Carson, but the 405 after 4
That's a
o'clock,
parking
it's
lot.
just a impossible thing. Yeah.
That's pretty dedicated and loyal. You're sticking with it and going, still driving all the way out there though, huh?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So Saturdays are guaranteed to train because there's no traffic on Saturdays in the morning when I go there. But having to train during the week, it's not easy to finish at 4:30 every day, to be able to go there, or 4 o'clock, because it takes between an hour and a half to 2 hours to get there.
That is so
But it takes me
crazy
only
because
25 minutes to get back.
It's only, what is it, like 10 or 15 miles from here?
17 miles, I think.
17
it is.
miles?
Yeah. But
2 hours to go
it takes
17
25 minutes to get back. When I finish training and I
There's
come
no
back,
traffic.
there's no traffic.
Oh my God.
The traffic in LA
California
is
is
brutal.
insane. Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah. I don't know how
Yeah.
you do it. I'm much lazier than that.
Yeah, but it's like everybody is different. I'm a loyalist, if you will.
You're not a crayonch.
Yeah, I'm a loyalist. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's a lot of discussions about this. I think that could be probably a good topic to tap into on the sense of
Feel free.
you have we have like in discussions within the jiu-jitsu circle, sometimes people talk about this idea that training in other places, like and some coaches are pretty tough about that idea, and some bigger gyms, they have sort of a network, if you will, right? Like
Affiliate gyms.
affiliate gyms and stuff like that. We do too. We are part of the ring system. So we have Tinguian, Yorbalinda. We have, in Culver City, there is one here, Delta too. It's like we have, and you have the Checkmate AOJs and all of those big names there. But I came from Brazil, and this is kind of in the culture of people like, no, it's like creonte, like you just use the word. I, I'm a little bit more on kind of an American side of things, to be honest.
Meaning what?
Meaning that I'm a person that thinks that, you're an adult, like I think you want to go train somewhere else, you go train somewhere else. Because there's open gyms in a bunch of places and stuff, and people are trying to recruit people. It's kind of the business thing. Jiu-jitsu came to America, and then they made it a business out of it, and so it's a business,
Yeah.
So
I have always had what a lot of people think is a controversial opinion about that topic. And I'm very much like you, I guess, on the American side of things. My philosophy was always, if I'm, because I've heard it too, not necessarily pointed at me, but, most gyms will tell you, like, you have to be loyal to our gym. You can't go anywhere else. A lot of them would do that, especially back in the day. That was a lot more prevalent of sort of the opinion. And I get where that comes from, especially in places like Hawaii, where, Hawaii was a big jiu-jitsu community early on, I think, because Helson Gracie moved there early on, and there was just so much jiu-jitsu there pretty much from the beginning, kind of like around the same time that California started becoming the mecca of jiu-jitsu out here back in the 90s. And, there's only so many places you can have a school, so you're fighting for real estate and trying not to hit saturation and those kinds of things. So it's important to try to keep whatever students you have. So I get from a business perspective why a gym owner would try to get people, to feel like they need to be loyal to your gym. My philosophy was always, if I'm paying you for jiu-jitsu, I don't know you shit. I can go wherever I want. You know what I mean?
It's a business. Yeah.
Not to be,
I'm a client,
disrespectful.
Right. I think that's the mindset, mine too.
Ironically, I started with, the Machados, and I've never left that camp, even though I moved back to Hawaii for 20-something years, and there are no Machado schools there. I continued to fly that flag for whatever reason. He asked me to continue to do that, which I was happy to do. But I was also very lucky but I also felt like I did owe him my loyalty, because I feel like I got a lot of sort of free jiu-jitsu out of just being able to become as great friends as we had become over the years early on. So I felt like I did owe him something. Like, he gave me a lot of extra, jiu-jitsu beyond just what I was like paying for jiu-jitsu for. But also he was there. All those brothers were kind of had the same philosophy. He's like, oh no, we think you should train in as many different places as you can. You know what I mean? You don't have to just train at our schools, especially, someone like me, I'm moving back to Hawaii. So go check out this affiliates and that affiliate or whatever. And these guys are good. And so I was lucky to have grown up in that universe, but I did experience that at some of the schools that I was visiting. They were very much like, well, our guys can't go train anywhere else or whatever it is, because we're cool with Hegan, you can come here. But so I was lucky in that sense. But yeah, I do feel like should be able to, and I think there's great benefit to training. The more the greater the number of schools and people that you're exposed to, the better your jiu-jitsu gets, I feel like. Because if you're training with the same 10 guys all the time, like, you're going to learn that universe and sort of be stuck there. But if you're exposed to different systems and different games, then you have more experience.
Yeah. I think there are two things that you said that to kind of unpack a little bit. Like, I will always carry the flag. That's not a issue. I think, for example, I would love to, for example, have a seminar with Mika Galvão, for example. It's like, he's not part of my system, ring, and it's like, but I think that kid jiu-jitsu is like so pristine, and I have his tutorials on BJJ Fanatics and stuff that I bought, but it would be nice to have, like, I would love to take a seminar with John Danahan when if he was in town, it's like, so there's some kind of things that I wouldn't consider like you're betraying your gym because you just want to have that exposure to a
Would your gym think that it's betraying
no,
you
no,
then?
no,
They,
no.
they're
But you use the word creonte because it's like an old school mentality and mindset that I think it applies to. I don't know if it. In the past, jiu-jitsu was very different when the word was created in Brazil, and then I was actually part of that. And I remember this very clearly back in the day, but
what is the literal translation? Just for
there's
people
no,
that are,
yeah, there's no literal translation.
but as I understand it, it means like
It's like a traitor.
disloyal,
Yeah,
you
traitor.
betrayal,
Yeah,
company jumper, like
yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah. Because the word kind of
Well, I guess it depends on the school too, right? Like, what is actually considered crayon? Like, crayon, would it be like going? I feel like most schools, if you're just going to see a seminar for someone else that that you like or something, that's not necessarily betrayal. But if you leave the school altogether and join the other school, that's usually how I had it explained to me. Like that's what someone that's a traitor does or whatever. But,
yeah.
it
I
could
think
mean
it's
those.
different when you get to a certain level, maybe, but. There are several stories over the years, like high level jiu-jitsu changing flags.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a thing of how do you say the you're looking up to your interest. That's different because one thing is the professional route of jiu-jitsu, in my opinion. And as you're a professional, it's like the same. Think about like in soccer or in basketball, like you get an offer, right? Like you can go to, let's say you had the choice to play for the Lakers or to play for the Knicks, and then you evaluate, and then you're like, okay, I think the Knicks can win this year, and then we did. Just
Somebody used to live in New York.
yeah, and 50 something years of drought, man. It's like
Really?
crazy. Yeah,
Is that how long it's been
it
since
was
they
like a
won?
lot. It was
I don't
crazy.
follow any sports, so first I had to like figure out what you were even talking about. So the Knicks won
Yeah, the NBA
championship this year.
championship. It's like but it's like a decision making when you're in a professional level I think is different. I they probably use the same word. I don't know. This is a conversation for the top end of jiu-jitsu people, but for me, it's like business, right? Like you have a contract. You're looking for your best interest. Maybe training with one gym is better than training with the other because then you can develop to win the championship or whatever. It's like a professional. It's like different, in my opinion. But professionals, I think, or people that are, most of the jiu-jitsu, honestly, is based on proximity. It's like you don't get people like, oh, I'm gonna sign up at that gym that's like 2.5 hours away. It's like
Right.
no, it's like if it's 30 minutes
Yeah.
and then you move to another city. I train in different gyms over my time. I started with a small gym in Copacabana, Fabrício. Got my blue belt there, and then I, stopped for a while because I was getting college. I got in college. There's no time and like all day in school and then I finished college, and then I moved to Campos, which is a city 4 hours away from Rio. And then I started Nova União.
Okay.
Then I did Nova União for a while. Got my purple belt there. And then, well, actually, before Nova União, actually, I have a story. I trained with Aliança
Okay.
because before I moved I worked in Barra da Tijuca in Rio de Janeiro, and then there was a gym just where I was working, and I was like, "It's here. It's either here or it's not gonna be."
Right.
So I trained for 6 months at Aliança, and then I trained in Nova União, and then almost 20 years gap, and then I'm training Marcelo now.
I mean, you mentioned the professional route earlier. That I feel like even more so justifies like any professional athlete, their careers are notoriously short, right? That lifespan of that is so short, so you have to maximize and do what's best for you to try to maximize your potential and the opportunities you have in that sense. So it makes even more sense that you potentially be moving around or doing what you need to do. I don't know. I mean, that's a philosophical debate that we could, we could go down that rabbit hole forever. I mean, and
Yeah, yeah.
defending both sides of that argument. And you know what? Everybody's right. I mean, opinions are like assholes, and everybody's got one. So, if that's how they feel, I respect the fact that that's how they feel. This is how I happen to feel about it, and those kinds of things. But not to switch gears completely, but and I'm happy to talk about jiu-jitsu all day long if you want, but we haven't touched on the whole AI thing yet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which is your latest passion. And how did you get into being interested in that? And I think you guys have told me before we talked today about how you just have always been sort of technology forward and always embraced technology and tried to jump in as things are developing.
So I'll make it a little bit more straightforward. My mom had an opportunity to buy me a computer. I wasn't even in college yet. So her friend retired because I was the third child. So my mom, I think I said in the beginning of the podcast, my mom was 41. She had me. She had a friend that was retiring, and she was a secretary for a lawyer in Rio, and then she bought me a computer. This is like DOS. So
disk operating system, right? Is that what it's called? DOS?
DOS,
I remember that.
DOS, yeah. So, and then Windows 3.11 came in 95, 98, and so on and so forth. But so she had an opportunity to give me an exposure to a technology that back then, for us in Brazil, because technologically delayed, gave me an edge, even though I was not going to informatics. It was called the course at the time. Now it's technology, data, and AI. So when I got to my physical therapy program, I knew a lot about computers. And also because I had a volleyball player that was a good friend of mine, much older, that was going to call informatics school at that time. And it's kind of funny story. Memory of my mom, it's like, my mom got me this computer net, and it's like, we are working on, my friend was in the house helping me, like, learn how to do the system and stuff like that. And then suddenly my mom hears my friend said, "Oh, the computer got a virus." And then my mom said, "I didn't know computers get sick." So true story. So
That's awesome.
Memory of my mom. It's like back in the day, it was like 1993, I think. 1993. Either the end of 2 or 93. And then, so I was very good in technology because I had access to computers early on. And so much so that I had my first win with technology when I was in my internship. Like I said earlier, it was like I worked for the biggest physical therapist in Brazil at that time. He recovered Romario for the World Cup in '94, I think. Then '98 was Ronaldo. So I worked with this group. So I was an intern, and we had a machine that people that familiar with physical therapy back in the day, they know, called Cybex. So there are two machines. There was an older one, that's the one that I used to work with athletes and putting them in, and like they do like a lot of quad training, and then there's a new one that was just recently bought. It cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and it was a brand new facility. It's like state of the art to recover soccer players. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money in soccer, as you can tell, especially in Brazil. And then this machine, the physical therapist responsible for the new machine, somehow broke the machine. The machine didn't work. So the guy that had just installed flew back to Texas, I think it was where he was from, and it's like, then nobody can solve the machine. They're gonna call the guy. It's gonna cost thousands of dollars for the guy to come back and try to fix it. So, and then I was like, "Can I look at it?" And so I knew a lot about kind of software installation. And it's like in an hour, I was able to save them thousands of dollars to get the
Really?
guy back in, and the machine started working again. And I did something so simple that was kind of
What was wrong with it? Do you remember?
well, I reinstalled the software. That's all I did. That's the reality. So it was a
Wow.
bunch of disks, right? Like so you had the
Floppy disks.
the smaller ones. There was a little later on, but my computer when I got they had the big ones, and then we had the smaller one later on. So I was very good in computers. So computers always been ahead. Even when I was in a physical therapy program, I started teaching technology for physical therapists and how to do the things. And fast forward to today, technology always got me ahead in all my job opportunities and things like that. And I was able to code Excel, spreadsheets, and do calculations and stuff. So it's always been, it's like when the AI came out, I was reading and I was like, oh, I'm going to fall behind because everybody can, like in my field, being a little bit on the edge of technology is an advantage, right? Like, and then I was panicking. I was like, I need to know everything about this thing. So that's how I kind of got into it. And then I was able to,
How long has it been? When did you actually start?
the day
messing
that they
around with it?
launched the subscription for the Chat GPT, I got it.
Really?
Like exactly the same day. It's like
I'm
like
so
a-
far behind.
yeah, yeah. So I started using, and then first I use it like a dummy, like a Google Chat.
I'm
and
still
stuff.
at that stage.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, I can use this to even train me the learning and then how to prepare for this and that, and then programming. So I did a couple of softwares for my work, and
You developed software for your work?
yes,
Wow.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Able to do like things that I used because I used to code on Excel, right? I'm using the word code, and if for the listener, they're gonna no, it's just formulas and stuff. But Excel is a pretty good prototype version of things.
Yeah, I feel like most
can-
people are not aware of
Yeah.
how robust Excel is.
Yeah, you can prototype nearly anything in Excel if you know how to do it, and especially if you add on the Python in the background and R for statistics and stuff like that. You can do a lot of stuff in Excel, and it's a familiar platform for a lot of people because Microsoft Suite is across the board, right?
So ubiquitous.
Yeah, and so I started, but even before that, I developed an app for my work back in the day using AppSheet, which now was bought by Google.
Okay.
It was it's trying to calculate compression forces on the spine, which is something that ergonomists do quite a bit to make sure that, when people are doing manual material handling, which is lifting boxes and stuff like that, this task goes above the limit that is recommended or below. And it's a kind of decision-making tool. And then with the AI now, it's in such a level that is incredible.
It's look, I started much later, obviously, but I feel like it's very difficult to try to keep up with the pace. Like you just start to wrap your head around what you think some of the things that AI can do are, and then like a week goes by and you listen to a podcast or something and they're talking about how, sort of what that universe looks like now, and it's just completely different from what you thought it was a week ago. Do you experience any of that, or you?
I don't see it that way. With all honesty, what I see is that the models, they keep improving. I don't know if you know the most recent one. So Mythos, that was the model that Anthropic came out.
It's Claude, right?
It's
the one
Claude,
that
yeah.
They shut down the government.
Well, so the model actually, I'm gonna give people that know about this.
Yeah,
They can
give us
Google.
the dummies version so people.
Yeah,
like
the
me
dumbest
can
version
understand.
the dumbest version is that Anthropic create this model, and then they put it in a called the sandbox.
Okay.
Sandbox is a container. So,
So
think
like guardrails, right?
yes, it's like a prison.
Right.
Like another way that you can think of it. It's like, okay, so your goal is to escape the sandbox, and let me know when you do it.
Those
so
are the instructions that they gave it.
yeah, so they're testing the model to see how capable the model is, and that model was so capable that not only escaped, but it created a log of everything that it did to escape, because within the sandbox it found a signal to the internet to be able to escape, and then it posted, and it was like it was a kind of a disaster. It was a good thing, but it was a disaster at the same time. So much so that Anthropic like had to kind of hold the model back, and because it discovered like hundreds of internet vulnerabilities that could be exploited by somebody that in the wrong hands in cybersecurity space. And then what they did was they talked to the government or whatever they did there. And then finally, a couple weeks, maybe a week or so ago, I don't remember the exact date, but they released a light version of the Mythos model. They finally kind of tune in, and then they put the guardrails on the cybersecurity part. It's called Fable 5. It only stayed about 48 hours online. I got to test it, and it was incredible. And the government blocked it. So they had to withdraw. Wow. So now we're back to the older model. But the model, the people that test, there's videos everywhere. I mean, it is like, it's a 9 out of 10 or 9.5, whatever. It was very good.
So what are the different categories of what is available in AI? I'm once again, there's generative AI, which is the chatbots, right? That's like ChatGPT and...
So I think I understand where your struggle comes from is this idea that, so there's a competition on the landscape about what the model does better than the other. And so I end up getting a subscription for most of them. The reason is the models, they surpass in some categories. So Gemini was really good at image creation and video production. I have my website, and then I created a video of myself creating a robot.
You should promote your website.
No, I don't need to. It's just
if you're not going to, then I'm going to.
Sure.
Is it all right for people to?
Yeah, Aresio Souza.
AresioSouza.com. ARESIOSOUZA.
Yeah, so I always wanted to have a personal website. I have my actual website domain.
I went through it. I looked at it. It was very well put
probably
together.
Several years. So I always saved it there. And it's like, one day I'll create it. But
even that, though, you used AI to create
that,
yeah,
right? Because it's so much faster, right? Like in the past, I would have to get like a WordPress or use some plugins for I created my website in a couple hours, because I was picky. It could be less than that. And then, yeah. It made it much easier to maintain and to create things that are meaningful to you. I created a presentation for training that I gave using Cloud Design. It was interactive. It was like, wow. It was like very good to use those tools these days that you can achieve so much in so little amount of time.
Okay, but so... what are these different, like there's a chat bot, right, which is basically just communication back and forth. It's to get information from, right? It's and then there are agents which actually perform functions.
Yes.
And are those the things showing my real AI proficiency here? Are those the things that like connect with other software, through an API or something, or?
Well, the agent can do tasks for you, and the agents are very goal-oriented, if you will. Like you give them my goal is, let's say, call 100 people. They don't stop until they call 100 people, whatever. So the chat box that we interact on a day-to-day basis are more kind of questions and answers, and you have to be careful with them. They are notoriously better than they used to be. So there's this thing called hallucination that you probably heard about it.
Right.
They are better now, but they still. I use it in a certain specific way that to prevent hallucination, because I usually get, for example, for scientific purposes, I don't want them to search in the internet for things. I vetted the material that they're gonna analyze first, and then I want to work on that space. So there's less hallucination.
So that's what they mean when they say like you're training the LLM, right?
Yes, yes. So in that case, well, they already have a training
right.
a strategy to it, and when you when you define the boundaries of where they're gonna get the information from, it's not 100%, but it's like you eliminate 95+% of the hallucination part of it, because you know that you already read the paper, you vetted, this is legit. So I want this, for example. I want something related to that interactions between those topics per se. Yeah. So the large language model is exactly that first layer, that you're talking about there. Then it's like the generative AI. It's like a good example is the image creation, right? Like create me a photorealistic image of a person surfing with a jiu-jitsu gi. That's, just like it's going through the whole space of data and trying to create exactly what you want. But that's kind of a low level yet.
As far as its ability, like you think it's going to get a lot better.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but you said too that there are different models are better at certain things than other things. Like you said, Gemini's better at image creation than like ChatGPT, for example, or
with ChatGPT caught up, to be honest, and in the image creation part. So the thing is the prompt.
Yeah. Okay. So that's right.
So the prompt is the problem for a lot a people.
Yeah, I think I must just be horrible at prompting. Well, I mean, I've a couple of times I've gotten far better results than I was expecting. I was like, holy crap, I'm actually going to use that for a logo or something.
Yeah.
And other times I'm like, Jesus Christ, no matter how many times I like go back and forth with these things, no matter how many iterations we go through, it just cannot generate what I'm trying to get.
Yeah. So I did some, you can ask Holly later, but her mama was here, and then they had those old pictures, right? Like, and then I was able to regenerate the pictures, like to the perfect pixels, kind of her dad too. And then for my dad, a picture that I had, I don't have a lot of pictures, but they usually, when they get them, they are so old and deteriorated.
They're disintegrating.
Yeah. And then I was able to get them like, wow.
I've got some pictures from my childhood that I might be talking to you about.
Yeah, so that's like simple things like that brings you joy, because it's part of your story in the past, and you want to keep those.
Something that you thought you were about to lose forever because it's fallen apart.
Yeah. So ChatGPT, OpenAI dropped the Sora with the video creation part. It's been a few months, I think, now. But so to generate videos, the Nano Banana Gemini ecosystem is very good at it. You can just give pictures and it can create like pretty good stuff.
How far along is AI at like automating tasks for you though?
It's already here. It's already automating a lot. It depends on what you want to automate.
Okay.
Yeah, you can automate quite a bit.
You said you actually learned how to code in like Python and other languages as well or something.
Yeah. So that's the problem with the past, right? Like you're a professional in a different field. You have to keep up your certifications and all this. So you have a limited amount of time to do other things. And then you learn that on the side. But the speed of change, at that time, the reason I was trying to learn, it was because like I was like, I could create an app, and that's back in the day. But then like, they update the code base all the time, like with a Apple iPhone ecosystem. Like you change, and then Swift, which is a programming language from Apple, was created. And then it was like, oh my God, it was like you always kind of hustling to keep up, but that's not your full-time thing, so you can never get there. And then now with the AI was like, I mean, I can actually use some of the knowledge that I have, understanding what needs to be done, and also get that even on a vibe coding side, like actually tell or actually take screenshots or show one app that actually works in the same way, and then you can replicate the code in the back, right? So there's many different layers that you can use to get what you want, not necessarily being a programmer.
Do you feel like I mean, I guess hindsight being 2020 and all, but you spent a lot of time learning how to code and those, the coding languages and all that kind of stuff. Now, are you frustrated at all that it sounds like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like you don't even need to know how to code and you can get into it and the AI will do the coding for you?
No.
Or are you still way better off having had that background because now you're able to think in that perspective? And
Yeah, so I think in my field, the issue is that there are some companies that do things for like my field, but at the end of the day, when you're like sort of a consultant, right? You're not gonna be able to buy a subscription for every single thing, and none of them will do everything for you. So you technically you're gonna have to spend a lot of money, but the ability to create something that can do and deliver consistent results, it's the way to go for a one person. I think it levels the playing field, because you can create things that are meaningful to you, one thing, on a personal level or even on a professional level, right? That can, whether you work for a company like I do, or you work for yourself, if you're just self-employed or consultant working for yourself, and then you don't have to necessarily pay big money for it because you can maintain if you learn properly. I think we are in the initial stages because the reality is that the big companies, they will get a handle on this, and then it's going to be a different story.
meaning there will be limitations imposed on it, and like
Well, we just
right
saw,
now it's like the wild wild west a little bit.
yeah, we just saw. I think that's the first time in the history of AI that we saw in recent with the government prohibiting the use of the Fable 5, for
Them
example.
actually getting
Yeah.
involved.
So I think we hope at least, that's what I hear in the community and people that are using and stuff like that. We hope that it's not something that came into existence and it's going to be pulled off, right? Like, because there's concerns like this race between U.S. and China and all of that. There's macro level political stuff that we can't control. But for the regular person that wants to use to create something meaningful for the work flow, it's very helpful.
I can't remember who said it. It might even have been Elon Musk. But I've heard the theory proposed and seen it sort of reposted a couple of different times. But that once this sort of new technology evolves, it'll get to a point where right now apps are ubiquitous, right? Like someone develops an app, they put it on the app store, and bazillions of people use it, and they're all using the same app. The idea is that at some point that will not be the case. It'll just be individually custom designed apps for that specific person because of how flexible and modifiable AI is, where it won't be one app being used by gazillions of people. It'll just be one app being used by one person, and anyone will be able to sort of just tell whatever it is, your device, or whether it's a smartphone or something, like this is what I want, and it'll make it for me, kind of a thing.
Yes.
I don't know if I phrased that. Does that make sense?
I completely get it because before this AI movement, there is something, and I have a couple books of this too. It's like before this AI kind of breached to the world and everybody can get a subscription and use it more advanced than just a Google search. There's something called, it's a concept. It's been used for a while, but it has been refined in modern times. It's called the second brain. I don't know if you heard about that. There's good influencers that talk about this, but the idea is that everybody, like yourself, like you have a life experience, you have a path, right? So it's hard to retrieve all of those things. It's like you have a specific way of work that defines and has we try to do this in a very antiquated way because we have a laptop or a computer, and then we have folders, right? So all your jiu-jitsu stuff,
Right.
right? Like all your, sales stuff, or all you kind of create compartments, right? But then the retrieval of that kind of knowledge, your knowledge, right? That is interconnected. Right now they live in folders, but it's interconnected in your brain. You can talk about. It's slow sometimes because you have to remember which folder I put this, and then, or we do this in memory, but our life has been always, to some extent, whether it was back in the day in a notepad, because we write books and then notepads and things like that. This idea of having a second brain, and then digital form came to expedite and enhance that, because there's no limit. Like, a book, you can run out of pages, or a notebook, you can run out of pages. And this has happened already in that sense. And there are some apps before this AI thing, like Notion is one of them. Obsidian is another one. I use both. There are things that I like about one versus the other. It's like a blank canvas, and then you build with links between them, and then you can use, and then you can acquire knowledge. How jiu-jitsu connects with, rehabilitation, for example. It's like you start creating connections. So the AI came to expedite that. And then what you're talking about there is exactly what I think it will happen, where you can create the app that deals with your life, like everything that you need is in there, and you don't have to buy a subscription from this, a subscription from that. No, it's an AI, it's an assistant to some extent, or it could be something that can help you brainstorm an idea, which we already do with AI these days, right? Like, so, like even on the other day, I was trying to prep for, something, and it was like, here is this content, brief me on it, like ask me questions about, and then so you can use that to like anticipate what kind of questions people may ask.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Or if you want to study for an exam, you upload the book or upload the content, and it's like, So on the Gemini, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's Notebook LM. It's like amazing.
Why? What does it do? That
Well, because you can
I
upload.
barely opened it, so I don't explain it to me. Like I don't know much about it, and
So let's say you want to create a summary, like a podcast about the paper or a book. You upload the PDF or whatever and then it will create an interactive conversation. It can create a mind map. You can work on certain concepts. That's a first layer, which I would generally recommend for most people. Like if you want to learn something, or if you want to do like a research about a topic, it will create that for you. And then you can create interactive links and stuff like that too.
could you use this AI like Notebook LM to create a whatever it is, not necessarily an app, but a process to teach you how to use AI?
You could
Use AI to learn AI?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could just find the way I generally say for the to prevent hallucination is try to find legit content first, like
So
vetted.
you want to narrow down what content it's drawing from.
Yes.
And you want to limit saying just go out there in the universe and
Yes,
look on the internet.
I
That's
know
less reliable.
that's how a lot of people do, because you can do that pretty easily because the internet is already there. But it's because I'm also in a field, like I'm in healthcare, right? Like you are the beginning and you are the end. So you can use AI in the middle, but you have to make sure that everything is correct there.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
the
like,
part that
because you-
seems almost overwhelming. Like
Yeah.
there's so much data that it would potentially have access to. How do you know, unless you I guess my point is you think that the benefit of having access to something like AI is that it can do the research, a gazillion times faster and in more depth than you can. That's supposed to be the advantage, right? But there's no way to, unless I slow down after it's given me the results and go and vet those results as far as like, verifying the accuracy of the information that it's giving me. And if I have to do that, then what's the point? You know what I mean? Because then I have to spend all this time like double checking to make sure that it did its homework basically and that the answers are right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I don't know how you use it, but it's like for me, for me, it's like I'm on a knowledge field, right? That let's say ergonomics, for example. I mean, I have a graduate degree in ergonomics, and I use it, and I know the field pretty well. And then I want to do, let's say, a summary about something, and then I upload a couple papers. So I think I would say is the first thing is where you're getting the information from as a filtering is a reputable source. If you ask the AI to go to the internet, you don't know if the source is reputable right away, right? Unless if you look at and then you clean it up. So I would say, for example, for me, I was like, I want to get things from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's a government source. So I consider that the clean data in my head.
Do we though? Do we trust the government?
Well, but that's
another podcast.
That's another podcast. This is a different story. But it's like for me is like I'm protected by the fact that I got this information from that source that we all agree in social convention that is legit. Okay. So I get a paper from, let's say, the New England Journal of Medicine. So it's like a high level impact factor, or, so I'm narrowing the scope before I even ask the AI to do something for me. That's my caution. Yes, you can get a bunch of stuff, but like sometimes if you're doing that for, let's say, other things like a business thing, you don't necessarily let's say I want to replicate this website because I like this layout, this design. No, you just give the website address, right, and then you give me what the code is. It's different. Maybe you change the colors or whatever. I'm not enforcing any plagiarism by any means, by the way. I'm just saying you're trying to create something and it depends on the context. But having the pre-established criteria and how you're going to get the information and give to the AI to process, because once you give the information to the AI to process, it doesn't make mistakes really easy, but you have to, you're the final person. I said in the beginning, you're the beginning and the end. It's like you read it, and then because you're a knowledge expert on that field, if something feels off, right away. If something's completely off, you're going to know.
What if you're trying to research or learn more about a topic that you're not already an expert in, and you don't know where the source data should come from? For example, I mean, you're very interested in the healthcare universe. I am too, as far as pertains specifically to me, right? Like, how can I be healthier or live longer with, better health span, those kinds of things. And I might just feed it all of, like, let's say, I took labs and got, a bunch of 150 markers different, right? And I just feed all the results into AI. How can I rely on it to interpret that data and give me a fair and accurate assessment?
That's a dangerous slope, in my opinion, honestly.
I would think so.
Yeah, I think there are things that we can, there's kind of a low risk per se. This is actually what I do, risk management. So medium risk and high risk. I think delegating that interpretation to the AI only is a slippery slope, in my opinion. At least at this point. There will be, I believe, eventually, I think it was Elon Musk who was saying this, there will be AI physicians that will be more accurate than people in diagnosis, for example.
Do you think it will contribute to finding the cures for diseases?
Oh, for sure.
Accelerate
100%,
that?
yes, 100%. 100% because the computational power to mathematically computate. It's one of the fields that I love, probabilities. It's just beyond.
I would think that the benefit would come from being able to review massive amounts of data and find whatever it is, patterns or something that would potentially contribute to.
Yes, but that's tied to probability because
Yeah, exactly.
because when you're looking at when you look at a massive amount of data and let's say symptoms and things like that, you're also looking at what is the most probable issue that is happening here, like a diagnosis, right? Like, and it's already done in it actually. So there's a field, another thing about. I can talk about this for forever, by the way. There's another field where called computer vision, which is, it's been a while. It's been around for a while, sorry. And they use this for imaging, like X-rays and MRIs and CT scans and you name it, ultrasounds. And they already can make better diagnosis than actual physicians that were trained.
Meaning, you go get the scan and feed the results to AI.
No, you give the image and then give the image and then the accuracy. It's you couldn't tell a couple of years ago. So you probably have to kind of double search that. I'm not taking that as if it's like a couple of years ago was at par with human, like the best physicians that do imaging. But I think it already surpassed, if I'm not mistaken.
And the AI is controlling the doing of the imaging or the interpretation of the
The
images?
interpretation,
Okay,
yes,
gotcha.
actually, yeah. So the machine does the scan, right? The X-ray machine or the CT
So
scan.
some technician is still running the scan.
Yeah, so you run the scan, but then the image, it needs to be sent to a radiologist to be able to interpret, right? And the level of accuracy of that is already incredible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it should theoretically only get better. What do you think about? So the big concern that I feel like normally comes from a large group of people that don't actually use AI on a regular basis, but the big fear that you hear everyone talking about is that AI is going to take my job and everyone's going to lose their job because of it. My own experience with it so far, I'll throw my 2 cents in beforehand, and I'm very well. I'm capable of admitting that this might potentially be just because I suck at using it still, but I feel like I've been disappointed by the results that I've tried to generate with AI on several occasions. So I'm like, I don't think anyone's losing their job for a little while yet. Like I think we're still a ways off from that, but I don't know. You're further down the road as far as.
No, I don't think I'm further down the road. I think it's just the fact that you're able to do a couple tricks with AI. It doesn't make you that much sophisticated than anybody.
But you know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like the people are talking about how
yes, universal income and
exactly,
all of this stuff. It's like we're going all the way down to the rabbit hole. But I think that there's some I never thought before when the first actually Elon Musk is kind of a visionary, like because he was talking this about a couple of years before even this whole thing was out.
Scary guy to bet against.
Yeah. So, and I was like, that's like nonsense. But then AI came, and then you start using it, and then you see what it's doing. It's like, I don't want to kind of call the doomsday on it, but like, I agree with the kind of big names, influencers that there's going to be disruption, and you actually already see that.
Yeah.
By the time we were recording this podcast, a lot of like Microsoft or like I don't remember exactly what the major ones were, but there's a lot of layoffs and stuff like that. You don't need as many programs that you did before, and the human interaction, it's not replaceable. Things that require people to people will still be around for a while, but the things that can be automated, like if you're doing a repetitive task, like I had to do those things because if you ever work with Excel, and people that work with Excel knows this, sometimes you have to do some repetitive things, and with Copilot and even Claude, and Claude is actually amazing, you can automate all of this stuff. It's
I
just
mean, the fact that we're
incredible.
sitting here having this conversation is actually proof of that concept. 10 years ago, there's no way I would have known what to do to start a podcast or anything like that. And I used AI, I'm not going to lie, to generate the equipment list, and all the instruction and direction. And there was a lot of fine tuning that went in. There was a lot of hours that went into it. So I'm sure this could have been done much quicker and much more efficiently.
Yeah.
But it all basically came from my doing that research and finding out, how can I get started for a reasonable budget, and not spend all of my money or whatever it is. And then what is the process? Like, how do I record the episode? How do I edit the episode afterwards? And I thus far have been having to figure all of that out on my own. So that's, I guess that is testimony to AI basically lowering the barrier of entry, you know what I mean? To what
Yes,
otherwise would be.
it's the equalizer, and it helps even with the technology in general, like YouTube, for example, with disrupt the traditional television and viewership and things like that. It was an equalizer because a regular person could start a channel and reach millions of people, right?
Or 7.
Or 7. 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, AI is definitely a topic we can spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, there's technology that been disruptive in the past, but nothing's even closer to this.
This is going to be the biggest thing, you think?
It is already. This is just when you put AI in the body, which is the robotics part, then all the physical labor and all of this stuff, it's gone.
It'll be, yeah. I guess I'm most interested in seeing how it potentially impacts and improves healthcare and things like that, and improving the quality of our lives in general.
Yeah. The healthcare part is complicated. I still think that it's going to be a lot of people around for healthcare reasons for a long time.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that there are far more dire consequences than just like trying to create a profitable business when it comes to that. So the guardrails for that need to be very sort of like I feel like meticulously overseen. You know what I mean? There's a lot more at stake, I guess, so to speak.
The social part, I think, is the hardest one to think about because humans are social beings, right? Like
We're social animals.
is social, and that it's actually it's one of the longevity grails, right?
Yes.
Like, it's like
you hear
a
that all the time.
social part of it. It's not only the physical and the mental health is another thing that is.
All the blue zone stuff, right? Like being part of a community.
Yep. So that's a different one. And the last thing that I would say on this idea of interconnectedness is we are still to see the benefits. Because right now, even with all this hype on the AI and the financial sector and all of this, technology, it's like we haven't yet seen the benefits yet.
Right.
It's like there's a lot of talk about like, how much the productivity increase and stuff like that. There's no data on that yet. We have people, trying, and you have the outliers. But when you put AI and then the robotics come to life for real, I think that's when we're going to see the big benefit improvements.
What would be your prediction as to the impact that has on what we were just talking about, like the sense of community or being social animals? I mean, you hear all the time about how AI is going to contribute even more so to an already sort of what seems to be an increasing problem. Like, you hear about populations collapsing in certain countries. The younger generations are far less social than they used to be. A lot of that is not because of AI at this point, but it's like social media or those kinds of things, and people just not getting involved in relationships and those kinds of things. You think AI makes that worse potentially? I mean, it's kind of movie fodder at this point, but at some point you're going to start to hear more and more about people just having relationships with their AI and that kind of thing. And
I think we've already seen a couple examples of that.
Yeah.
It's been public, but people using AI as a therapist and stuff like that. That part of prediction, it's complicated. like all predictions are complicated, but I think the isolation, and I don't think social media was the only culprit on that, to be honest with you. I think we started the podcast in the beginning talking about this idea of like how we grew up in with certain things that this generation not necessarily, like a tough environment and stuff like that. It's like I think the transition happened in a combination, is a multifactorial. That's how we usually define. Especially when, like, I come from a field of musculoskeletal injuries, never only one thing. It's a combination of things. There's been neglect by several different areas. For example, Thomas Sowell talks about this in the United States. There's a lot of international similarities with Brazil and things like that. For example, family disruptions, for example. The bedrock of growing up, a family has been, it's kind of a secondary thought. It's like, this is actually, it's the base of the pyramid, right? Like it's this foundation. So you have kids, growing up without fathers or sometimes moms, it goes both ways, but there has been policies that have not, being in favor of maintaining the overarching well-being, which is actually what I do now, which is this idea of not only like physical therapy, like musculoskeletal, it's like well-being as a general.
So a more holistic approach.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach. I work within the framework of total worker health and building this idea of worker health and well-being, which is broad, and it's very difficult because you need to know about a lot of subjects like AI, and you need to know about the physiology and body, but also mental health and social and things like that, and they put this all together and understand that there are too many compounding factors. AI is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, even when I was early talking about this idea like exercise, like physical education was nearly like, it's not a thing anymore. It's like, kids need to exercise. It's a scientific proven things. If you are born in families that parents exercise, you're more likely to be fit. And then the snowball. So it's like, physical health decay affects mental health. Like it's a kind of a snowball thing. And I think there are many things to be fixed along the way. Diet, like over 2/3 of the population in the United States already either overweight or obese.
I heard another statistic that suggests that there's a very low percentage of the younger generation that would even be capable of passing like a physical exam for the military, that kind of a thing.
Yes, that's actually, so there's a UFC fighter that talked about this years ago on a podcast of Joe Rogan, Tim Kennedy, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a special force,
right.
ex-military, yeah. A lot of kids probably can pass the basic standard of the military. They had to lower the standard, I heard, at some point.
And they still can't pass.
Yeah. So
that's not very, that doesn't provide a lot of hope for the next generation, the future.
Yeah, but to your point, I think it is not one thing. It's a combination of things that happen over a long period of time that yield this. But, on the other side, I feel like I see some of the younger generation having some, care about, for example, I make that joke because, I'm a Brazilian guy and I like beer. Like I like IPAs now because back in Brazil, there was no IPAs back in the day. So, but the new generation drinks less.
That's actually
so
one of the positive statistics that have come.
Yeah, one of the positive statistics. They drink less, so beers and stuff. So they try to drink or eat more clean or things like that. So I don't know to what extent I can trust the verification of those statistics, but I think it's a bias, to my opinion, in the sense of areas. I think we're privileged to live in maybe LA or like people in New York, like in a nice areas, but the obesity starting at childhood is already a thing
Yeah.
in the United States. So
Yeah. So I guess I mean, depending on where you live, it's interesting to see whether people are hopeful about the future generations or more sort of doomsday-ish about it.
yeah, I don't think I think this issue is not new. I mean, you know, my parents
health,
probably
yeah, for
thought
sure.
about you know that this generation is different, and we're gonna think of the next generation is different and things like that.
Yeah, well, definitely as far as the different impacts that all these different variables have on them. But I do feel like one of the more important and relevant statistics are, I think you're hearing for the first time that like the next generation is for the first time ever like slated to have shorter lifespans than ours or whatever it is. And that's to me a very startling, a revelation.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Where would you?
I think I don't know if it's my generation and I can't even remember exactly what the order is. I'm Gen X, and then there's what is it, millennials that come afterwards, or and then Gen Z or something like that. One of those following generations is statistically predicted to have shorter lifespans than the previous one, which is like I think like the first time that's ever happened.
I would love to hear more about that. Actually, if you know more information, it's like, I don't know because statistics is kind of a complicated field too. It's one of my favorite topics, but to some extent, what I think that I see the biggest issue, if you think about the talks that the things that we were talking before on the kind of big things for longevity, right? Like nutrition and exercise and all the kind of stuff. The social part is the part that I feel that this generation is more isolated than the past. I don't know. Nutrition is such a complicated topic. I have friends that are in the field and things like that. It's like,
in nutrition.
yeah, I'm in a health
Right.
space, so I have physician
I
friends. I
might
have,
want to
yeah,
ask
and
you
I
for
was like
referrals
all of this
afterwards. I'm
stuff.
interested in having some of those conversations on this podcast.
Yeah, it's like it's just there's so many different diets and so many different approaches and then things like that. And a common denominator that you actually mentioned in the beginning of the conversation was this idea is honestly, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter if you're paleo or vegan, whatever. It's like anything that can reduce your inflammation levels, I think I'm signed up for. I think that's my take on it. Keto and all this stuff. Like it's really hard to measure that kind of stuff. But you know what is not that hard to measure is the effects of exercise on health, right?
Yeah,
Or
that
good
seems to
sleep.
be undeniable.
Yeah, or sleep or social. Like those things, they have been battle proof to increase lifespan and be associated with like longevity from the studies. And to your point, the social part with the AI and all of this, and like people using AI as a therapist, as a friend, and all of this, just show how much departure from the real world we are seeing.
Well, I would say for me, I started observing it before AI, and it was kind of, I feel like the increase started to become a little bit more, the momentum picked up, I think, with the advent of the internet in general. And maybe this is just like the me crying about being an old man thing, but I just remember growing up, our worlds were this small. You know what I mean? Like we had our neighborhood and the people we knew in it, and we had phones that were landlines, and we didn't have smartphones and all this stuff. So your world was a lot smaller, and the people you knew, that universe was smaller too. So you had whatever it is, like 10 or 20 friends, and when you made plans with someone, you had to follow through because there was no way to send a text and like flake out at the last minute or something. Like you had to call someone, make a plan, take a bus to get there, and there was no way to communicate on the way or anything like that. So you had to show up, and I think we were forced to be more reliable by default in some ways. And then with the advent of the internet, and then especially social media after that, I feel like that started to contribute to I 100% agree with your comments about it being sort of this variable compounding effect. I hadn't really thought of it that way in the past, but I 1000% agree with that perspective. But I also feel like one of the things that did accelerate that sort of creating a less committed human and and potential more isolation as well was having social media. Now you've got 10,000 friends instead of 10. You know what I mean? And so I think that contributed to people's lack of being willing to make commitments, whether they be in social relationships or not just romantic relationships, but even there's always a bigger and better deal because I've got a gazillion other friends out there, and so I can't commit to this one thing because there might be something better out there for me, kind of a thing. So I've always felt like that contributed to it a little bit. I don't know if AI is going to make that worse or better. I don't necessarily see it having all that much more of an impact than what's already happening, so to speak. And I think that contributes a lot, along with now taking in all those other variables that you mentioned. I think that contributes a lot to the result that we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm going to try to take a spin on a podcast at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the spin is going to be something that I will be not very committed to dig deep.
All right.
But I recommend for you to have on a podcast a psychologist at some point.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. But I will transition to a topic that is more like spirituality related, in a sense that, and I'll bring back jiu-jitsu for just a second, just because it all ties together. So I think the beauty
This
of
is fantastic. You might need to start your own podcast.
No, I think the beauty of connecting things is because, life is all interconnected, right? And sometimes you learn something in jiu-jitsu that you can apply in your business, or you can apply at work, or one thing that it's my experience, my bias, by the way, getting the idea of the ego. That's why I said at some point you need to have somebody that is specialized in psychology here. But one of the things that I learned through my time is I think the social media part and the things that we've seen in more recent years has been in a way escape, and at the same time a way to make things look perfect, right? But that's why being a jiu-jitsu practitioner, if you're not yet, I think you should, if you're men and women, will help you, because I remember early on when I started jiu-jitsu, one of the first things that I learned is you have to leave your ego behind when you enter the mat. It's like it was a known thing, because all your greatness that you think you have may be shattered in a second.
For sure will be.
So you start learning to manage yourself better, and only through struggle people can do that. Physical struggle is one way. Psychological struggle can the eustress, with the right amount of stress is good, but too much stress can become problematic psychologically, right? People go through this all the time.
Becomes
divorce,
toxic.
marriages, or relationships, friendships, work, being fired, or whatever. So there's a certain amount of stress that is good, and a certain amount of stress that it becomes pathological. But having this ability to manage the ego is something that older generations, because they saw a struggle early on, they always had some sort of a and they did not have an outlet like the social media platforms and stuff to make it like a second life, or it has to be real. It has to be portrayed. When you go out to the street and you're going to see your friends, and even if everything is not good at home and things like that. But the spirituality part, which is the other connection, is that, I grew up Catholic. So I was born and raised Catholic. My mom was church every Sunday, sorry. And I studied in Catholic school. It's like, and I'm not trying to promote anything, but it's like at certain point in my endeavor, it was like, I want to understand all religions in the world. I want to learn about all of it. And I started studying like crazy. And it was before college even. And the reason was because I want to understand other people's perspectives. It's like I want to make sure that I'm not judging people for their beliefs. And then I try to, later on you go to school and then you learn. And it's like now we have a different way to approach this, by more scientific way, looking at the conscientiousness and things like that. But I became so interested that I ended up going to ecumenical debates and things like that. There's a part of the story that diverts a little bit because
Jesus Christ, now we need to have 2 more podcasts. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and mostly because there's this physical world and all of this, and then there's something that we don't know necessarily what it is, but there has been a human pursuit of it, and those things help, in my opinion, to ground people and understand that the world is not about you. That's the ego part. Like, it's not only you. It's like you're not the center of the universe. You're part of it. And then we go from like, okay, so how do I contribute for this to be better than when I came? And that's my first principle that my mom taught me. No matter where you go, just make sure that you leave better than when you found
on your website.
Yeah.
I like that.
Full circle.
I have a similar philosophy. I think it's an oversimplified sort of capture of what, a lot of Eastern philosophy tries to sort of capture, and it's along those same lines. I feel like if I'm going to be in this world, I should make it a better place. My other caveat is just that, well, if I can't make it better, at least don't make it shittier. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the oversimplified version. Same thing with any relationship I'm in. If I'm going to know you, then your life should be better because you know me. At the very least, not worse because of it.
For sure, yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's the departure. Yeah, ecumenical debates and like I was really into understanding religions. I became a monk for a bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit! 3rd podcast now.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Wow. Well, I think that's a healthy perspective and a great way to look at things, and maybe that's the best way to wrap this conversation up for now, to leave people with that sort of positive message. So thank you very much for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation.
Yeah,
with
it was
me.
my pleasure, for sure.
I don't know if you have anything to promote to all 5 of the followers that we have, but do you have like your website is aresiosouza.com?
Yes. Well, maybe good. I have a book recommendations there on there's a bookshelf.
I've checked out your website. It's well put together, and there is a lot of cool sort of reference material there that I'm interested in looking further into. So.
Yeah, it's more my personal story than anything else, just to be out there. And then
it's a fun story. I tried to capture some of those points in this conversation, but yeah, I mean, hopefully we can do this again sometime if you as long as you didn't hate it.
Oh, no. You were a fantastic host, and I appreciate to be here. And it was a very nice conversation. Sorry if I took too long on jiu-jitsu conversation, but,
kind of long enough.
So.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. Let's do this again.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.